Galen Grace was born in Wisconsin, grew up in Massachusetts, and presently resides in Pennsylvania, but he lives wherever he happens to be at the moment, feels at home wherever he is in the universe, and steps through almost any door that opens to him. He's worked in academia and professional theater, published a pair of award-winning novels, and performed Sacred Healing Touch since 2014. The piece he's going to read for us is a work of creative nonfiction intended for live storytelling. Structured around a tattoo he got this summer, it recounts two trips he took to the desert Southwest to heal his grief from a series of personal losses and to get his spiritual groove back. The events changed his life in ways he never imagined and brought him face to face with his own mortality. So buckle in, you're about to hear his story.
My new tattoo, or the incomparable lightness of being. I got a new tattoo this summer on my left shoulder, which enthusiasts have told me is a place of honor. When I got my other tats, four Viking runes on my right shoulder, an Om on the back of my neck, the symbol for Svadhisthana, the name of the second chakra, at its site on my sacrum, an infinity sign on my left forearm and a quill pen on my right one, and the peace symbol and a heart on the backs of my hands, I didn't realize I was reserving such a revered spot. But once I decided what to put there, it seemed fitting. I provided an image to the tattoo artist as an inspiration. It's a photo I took in the congregation house at the Church of the Peyote Way, on the lands of the Chiricahua Apache in Arizona, in September 2022, while I fasted for 24 hours in preparation for a spirit walk on the equinox, during which I would consume a heroic dose of the plant medicine. The congregation house was filled with similar works of art. They depict a large black bird that's central to Native American mythology about the healing effects of peyote among tribes not just in the desert Southwest, but across the Great Plains and into the Pacific Northwest. In the painting I sent to my tattoo artist, the bird rises into the air, its wings stretched wide, each ending in 5 pointy feathers. Inside its dark body, countless tiny dots of light shine out. At its heart, the crown of a peyote cactus, its potent button, points at the viewer. It's no wonder, after I inscribed the image so deeply into my consciousness during my fast, that it figured so profoundly into the most vivid vision I had during my spirit walk. As I sat before my fire at a remote campsite that night, gazing at the most stunning canopy of stars I've ever seen, here's what I experienced. First, the celestial lights formed constellations, connected not only by internal lines, but also by the external outlines sometimes added on sky maps to show what creatures they represent. They weren't just the standard creatures, and they fit together like a perfect jigsaw puzzle. The entire sky was a tight pattern of star creatures, each of which came alive. The entire sky was a mosaic of living, breathing star creatures. And somehow I had the undeniable felt sense the entire sky was at the same time one single living, breathing star creature. A beautiful metaphor for existence, literalized as the visible cosmos. As I gazed in wonder at this simultaneously discrete but unified field of life, the stars shifted. They came together, all of them, before my eyes into the shape of the peyote bird, a huge peyote bird which then soared upward, leaving behind a void of darkness. Not quite 3 weeks later, My aorta dissected, tore apart inside, an often fatal condition. Throughout the event, including when the ER doctor told me the mortality rate for the open heart surgery needed to save my life, I felt no fear. I knew there was no cause for fear. Rewind 1 year to the September equinox of 2021, when I set out on a 24-day, 6,000-mile, mostly solo road trip from Pittsburgh to Arizona and back. That experience not only inspired my spirit walk, but prepared me to face the imminent death of my body-mind without a trace of fear. I whet my appetite for the peyote trip with a low dose of mushrooms in the company of a Latina native healer who'd trained with a shaman. I met her in a natural hot spring in Jemez National Forest near Santa Fe, Nuevo Mexico. As I basked in lukewarm water, I noticed someone emerge from a hole in the rock wall, and I realized the spring contained a cave. Ever curious and ever adventurous, I entered the cave, nearly tripping over a woman's legs as she reclined against the wall near the opening. Once I settled against the wall on the other side of the cave, the woman extended her arm toward me, holding something in a loose fist. "I found this beneath the water," she said. "I sense it's meant for you." I opened my palm, and onto it she released the contents of her hand, a heart-shaped stone. I smiled and turned over my hand and placed the stone on the back of it to show her it aligned near perfectly with the heart-shaped tattoo there. She splashed her way over and threw her arms around me. 2 days later, we met up again in Taos and ate mushroom chocolates I'd brought on my road trip. Once the psilocybin kicked in, she taught me how to read souls. "Yours is all light," she said, "except for one tiny bit of sorrow." Then she waved her hands over my chest, uttering an incantation in a presumably indigenous language. She drew her hands upward as if extracting something from my heart, then cupped them together. She peered at the contents, showed them to me. "This isn't serving you." Then she took a breath and blew it away. Like you, she didn't know why I'd gone on this epic road trip in the first place. It wasn't just that it gave me a chance to set foot in all four of the remaining U.S. states I'd yet to visit, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Arizona, which happened to be in a row. I'm not really a bucket list kind of guy. It wasn't like I anticipated I might die the next year. I went on that literal journey as a means for going on a journey within. I was on a quest to get my spiritual groove back. Over a few years leading up to that, I underwent a staggering amount of trauma and loss, and it knocked me off my game. First, a surgeon slit my throat and removed my thyroid gland and the large cancerous growth on it. Soon after that, it became clear my mother's recent memory loss and balance issues went beyond normal age-related decline. Her Alzheimer's disease progressed rapidly from there, culminating in her death, with me at her bedside in June 2020. I buried her body in a Florida nature preserve and grieved during the enforced isolation of the COVID pandemic lockdown. At the time of her death, I wore a heavy brace on my knee. A few weeks later, surgery to clean up my shredded meniscus removed most of the cartilage from that knee and ended my long-distance running, taking away an activity that had brought me tremendous joy and stress relief for over a decade. In the wake of all this loss and more, I spiraled into severe depression, but couldn't find an available therapist in the midst of a nationwide mental health crisis. I managed to stay afloat with the help of my meditation practice and microdoses of DMT. In the spring of 2021, I finally emerged from the darkness. While on a triple microdose of DMT, more of a mini dose, I suppose, inspired by the spiritual teacher Adyashanti, whose name means primordial peace, I recommitted to the liberating process of shedding all my ideas and images of myself. I intended the epic solo cross-country road trip that fall to be the core of that process, bringing me back into a state of stable equanimity. The day after my mushroom soul healing ceremony in Taos, as I drove out of the mountains toward the desert flats and my next destination of Oklahoma City, a song in my music rotation by mantra chanter Krishna Das came on. On this trip, that song had unfailingly made me sob as waves of lingering grief arose. And sure enough, at a key point in the song, I felt emotion surge up from my gut into and through my heart. This time, instead of mournful tears, I erupted in laughter. Unbridled, joyous laughter. She really had removed the last bit of sorrow. I felt a lightness of being I hadn't experienced in years. Several days later, as I sat on my meditation cushion, preparing for the final leg of my journey, the short drive from Cincinnati to Pittsburgh, I reflected on the openness, the spaciousness of being in which I'd abided for much of my trip. I felt free in a way I wondered if I'd be able to sustain in my ordinary routine at home. Then I realized all I could do was continue to allow myself to flow with whatever experience unfolded. I practiced this flow state while driving that afternoon, perceiving other cars and drivers not as truly separate from me, but rather as discrete energetic forms within a single unified field, much like the vision of the constellations I would have a year later. As I practiced this, I experienced a shift in my consciousness, in the ground of my awareness. It was subtle but profound. Nothing was actually different, but everything had changed. The experience was non-conceptual, visceral, immediate, beyond words, and therefore can't be described in an accurate manner. The best I can do is point toward it. Imagine seeing the world in 3D plus. Imagine time and space no longer exist in your mode of perception, so there's no distance between you and other objects. Imagine everything you perceive possesses the quality of I-ness or me-ness that you typically associate with your physical body and sense of inner self, but not in an egoic way. There's no trace of ego. You know, in a way beyond thought or feeling, that you, at your most essential nature, what you truly are, is everything and everyone. You feel radically intimate with life in all its forms. You know, in the same way, There is no reason to fear the death of your physical body. There's no reason to fear anything. Imagine you experience this not just for a fleeting moment or so, but for 2 weeks straight. Imagine for 2 weeks straight you abide continuously in the truth of your essence nature as the pure, conscious energy that pervades all things, even as you move through the world in a state of embodiment, in radical intimacy with life, experiencing childlike wonder and awe at the most ordinary sensory perceptions and feeling an incomparable lightness of being. Since my aorta dissected, I've faced a series of related health challenges. Living in this body often has not been easy. And yet, despite residual fragility in my arteries and damaged blood vessels in my brain, my condition is generally stable, and my body is in many ways physically stronger than it was before that event. I am at this time imperfect in my ability to abide in my essence nature, to remain for extended periods in radical intimacy with life. When I'm there, it's oh so sweet. When I'm not, it's not as sweet. Native traditions view the peyote bird as a symbol for life, renewal, strength, and wisdom. Sometimes called the sacred clown, it's also a reminder not to take ourselves too seriously. Indigenous cultures often incorporate the symbol into ceremonial healing practices. The peyote bird the tattoo artist put on that honored spot on my left shoulder is made entirely of little dots set against a field of stars, with elements below to suggest it's on the rise, befitting the vision I had the night of my spirit walk. My wish is we all might feel such an incomparable lightness of being, we can't help but, like the bird in my vision, leave behind the void of darkness and soar upward into the infinite sky.